Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a concept that's, well, it's so fundamental it pretty much underpins everything you experience. We're talking about the principle of duality and opposition.
Exactly. And it's not just, a one-off thing. It's more like the universe's basic operating system. And therefore yours too. Think of it as this constant interplay of forces shaping, well, everything.
Right, like those pairs you see everywhere. Yin and yang, light and shadow, even things like us versus them, or just a simple problem needing a solution. It seems basic maybe, but really getting this, it's key.
Mm-hmm. And it's more than just conflict. It's not just things clashing. This dynamic tension, this opposition, that's the engine. It drives progress. It fuels evolution, powers our ability to adapt, and it sparks those real aha moments you sometimes get.
So to really get our heads around this, we've looked at insights from, well, quite a diverse range of sources, exploring it from lots of different angles.
Yeah, and our mission here in this deep dive is basically to pull out the most crucial insights, to really explore how this fundamental principle, duality and opposition, shapes your daily life.
Okay, so let's dive in then. This principle, duality and opposition. One of our sources looks at it from an AI perspective, describing the universe as this system of constantly interacting forces that are, well, inherently dualistic.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating there is that these forces don't just exist on their own. They inherently come in pairs, dualities. Yeah. And the key insight, I think, is that this opposition isn't just about things being against each other. It's a dynamic interplay. It actually generates something new.
So it's not conflict just for conflict's sake.
What?
It's the tension itself that gives rise to complexity. It's like the friction that sparks change.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. It defines the very nature of things in a way.
Yeah.
And if we connect this sort of fundamental idea to the grand sweep of history, well, you see it echoing all over human experience.
Oh, absolutely. History practically pulses with opposition, doesn't it? You see empires rise, fueled by certain ideas or resources, and then they decline as opposing forces, internal or external, gather strength. Revolutions. They're fundamentally about challenging an existing power structure with an opposing vision.
Mm-hmm. And what's critical to understand, I think, is that these huge historical shifts, they aren't random. They're often direct, almost predictable responses to oppositions that already exist. Think about, say, widespread scarcity of resources. That opposition has consistently spurred innovation throughout history. It's a catalyst.
Right. Necessity is the mother of invention, sort of thing.
Exactly. Or systemic oppression that almost always leads to some form of resistance, some rebellion. The oppressed seek to resolve that imbalance.
It makes you wonder, though, where did this human tendency towards opposition even start?
Well, the sources suggest it's really deeply tied to the emergence of human consciousness itself. The moment we could distinguish self from other, or here, from there, now, from then, those are all foundational oppositions. They structure how we even perceive reality.
And it's not static, is it? It's not like humans found opposition, figured it out, and that was it.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
New oppositions are constantly emerging as systems evolve, as our understanding deepens. I mean, look at artificial intelligence now. That's creating entirely new ethical questions, new societal adjustments, pitting potential benefits against potential risks, brand new oppositions.
It's like this continuous cycle, opposition, resolution, then new oppositions pop up. Okay, so history is one big example, but this duality thing, it shows up in some, well, unexpected places too, like genetics.
Precisely. Yeah, well, within genetics, biology, you see this principle illustrated beautifully. Homologous chromosomes, they exist as pairs. The interplay of dominant and recessive alleles, and that's another form of opposition in how traits get expressed. And think about the opposition between genetic mutation that introduces variation, the chance for change, and natural selection, which acts like this filter, favoring traits that help survival.
Wow, and it goes even deeper, right down to the cellular level.
Indeed. You can view life itself as this constant active resistance against entropy, the tendency for things to get disordered. Organisms are always striving to maintain homeostasis, that internal stability, against all sorts of disruptions.
Okay.
The predator-prey dynamic, that's an obvious opposition driving adaptation. And even something like cellular respiration involves this balanced opposition between creating energy and then consuming it.
It's really quite astonishing how pervasive this is. What about in the realm of ideas?
Yeah.
Philosophy. That seems like fertile ground.
Oh, absolutely. Philosophy is fundamentally structured around exploring dualities. Mind versus body, good versus evil, truth versus falsehood, subjective versus objective, free will versus determinism. I mean, these are the enduring themes philosophers have grappled with for centuries. And the very act of doing philosophy, of questioning assumptions, that itself is an opposition to just accepting ideas without challenge.
So it's about actively pushing against the edges of what we think we know.
Exactly. And this principle, it extends beyond just abstract thought into how we understand the physical world too. Physics and mathematics.
Okay, lay some physics on me.
Well, think about the fundamental forces. Positive and negative charges. Matter and its counterpart. Antimatter. Newton's third law even. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's a foundational principle of opposition right there, governing physical interactions.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And math. Seems a bit more abstract, but you're saying opposition is there too.
Absolutely. Think about basic operations.
Yeah.
Addition and subtraction are opposites, right? Inverse operations, they cancel each other out. Positive and negative numbers themselves represent a fundamental duality. And, the very act of solving an equation implies there was a problem, an imbalance, an opposition you're trying to resolve.
Huh. Never thought of it quite like that.
Even in logic. True, false, and or not operators, the idea of a contradiction. These are all built on logical oppositions.
Okay, wow. I'm really starting to see this underlying pattern everywhere now. It even shapes how we think, right? Our beliefs, our internal world.
Totally. Our internal state of mind is this constant juggling act. Desires versus fears, hopes versus disappointments. That ongoing internal chat between self-affirmation and self-doubt. And when you look at belief systems, they often define themselves in opposition to other belief systems.
Right, like we believe X, which is different from what they believe.
Precisely. And our basic concepts of right and wrong, they largely emerge from this perceived opposition between actions we see as helpful or beneficial versus those we see as harmful or destructive.
So, okay, this isn't just some abstract high-level idea. It genuinely weaves through our individual lives. It dictates how we interact with the world, with each other.
It really does. You experience it directly in your own internal conflicts, that push and pull between what you want right now and maybe long-term goals or personal desires versus responsibilities. You see it play out in relationships, disagreements, competition, sure, but also the dynamic tension that actually fuels good collaboration. And it shapes our bigger societal structures too. Laws, cultural norms, even collective movements often arise as reactions to some perceived opposition.
And art, that's fascinating. One of our sources really digs into how art is this profound manifestation of the human experience of opposition. Let's talk music first.
Yeah, what's really insightful there is how music actively uses opposition to create its effects. Consonance and dissonance that creates tension and release, right? A fundamental opposition driving the music forward. Major and minor keys evoke contrasting emotions.
Yeah.
Rhythm plays off silence. And chords themselves often set up this initial harmonic opposition that then resolves, giving you that feeling of stability or closure.
It's like the music is telling a story of conflict and resolution just using sound. What about visual arts? Paintings, sculpture, how does it show up there?
Well, in visual arts, you see it straight away with light and shadow. That creates depth, contrast, draws your eye. The subject, the positive space, defines itself against the negative space around it. That's a visual opposition.
Okay.
Complementary colors placed together. They create visual buzz, tension, and the contrast between dynamic flowing forms and static, rigid ones. Artists play with that opposition all the time.
And things like theater and movies, they're practically built on conflict, which is basically opposition, right?
Entirely, yeah. At the core, you've got the protagonist versus the antagonist. Their opposing goals drive the whole plot, the rising action in a story. That's just an escalation of opposition, of obstacles, builds to the climax peak conflict and then resolves somehow. The whole narrative arc is propelled by opposition.
And when this opposition gets extreme or takes a really negative turn, that's when we see human struggles, misfortunes really come to the fore.
Exactly. Illness is the opposition to health. Poverty, the stark opposition to having resources. Grief, that profound opposition to the presence of someone you've lost. And war, perhaps the most destructive form. Violent conflict between groups with goals that just seem irreconcilable.
And these really intense oppositions, they don't just stay contained, do they? They often force bigger reactions, adaptations.
They do. These major struggles, they intensify opposition. They compel people, societies to adapt, to innovate out of necessity, or sometimes tragically, to succumb. They really throw into sharp relief the scarcity of resources, the need for safety, the universal drive for well-being.
Now, some of the examples our sources bring up are pretty thought-provoking, looking at things like drugs, sex, greed, even truth and lies. through this opposition lens. Let's start with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, often using drugs or alcohol is driven by a desire to escape some kind of opposition, right? Physical pain, emotional distress, a reality that feels too hard. But what's interesting from this perspective is, while they might offer this temporary illusion of resolving that initial opposition, they very often lead to new, sometimes much worse oppositions. Addiction, health problems, broken relationships.
It's like trading one set of problems for another, often ending up worse off. What about sex? That seems more complex to analyze this way.
Well, sex is tied to biology, pleasure, procreation, obviously. But it can absolutely become a major arena for conflict, jealousy, exploitation even. It highlights the potential opposition between, say, individual desires and social norms, or just the conflicting wants and expectations between people.
And greed. That seems like a pretty clear example of opposition.
Indeed. Greed, at its core, is this excessive desire for more. It creates a direct opposition between having and feeling like you're not having enough. And since resources are often limited, this relentless pursuit frequently leads to competition, conflict with others wanting the same things.
Truth and lies, that's a classic fundamental opposition.
Absolutely, a core intellectual and moral one. Truth tries to align our understanding with reality. Lies deliberately try to distort it. This opposition is just central to trust, effective communication, how societies function at all.
And then maybe the biggest opposition of all, life and death.
It is. Life is being alive, growth, change, interaction. Death is its permanent end. This ultimate duality has driven so much philosophy, religion, science throughout history as we try to grasp its meaning.
And what about something like faith? How does that fit into this opposition framework?
Faith, in many ways, seems like a human attempt to find meaning, order, solace in a world that's inherently full of uncertainty, unknowns, and opposition, suffering, mortality. It's about adopting a belief system that helps people cope with things they can't fully know or control. It offers a sense of resolution, maybe, or acceptance in the face of those inherent oppositions.
So it's like creating an internal balance when facing fundamental uncertainties. Our sources also look at our emotions through this lens.
Yes, things like laughter, crying, anger, joy. You can see them as our internal responses to perceiving opposition, either resolving or intensifying. Laughter, for instance, can be that physical release of tension when a small, harmless opposition gets resolved unexpectedly, humorously.
Right.
Crying is often a response to loss, where the opposition, the absence of something valued, becomes painfully, irrevocably real. And anger often flares up as a reaction to perceived injustice, a violation of expectations. It's an opposition to what we think is right or fair.
So our emotions are like internal signals, showing how we're processing the oppositions we face.
Precisely. And when we act on an emotion, those actions are often driven by our internal model of how to navigate that specific opposition and get to a desired state. Seeking comfort when sad, confronting a threat when angry, that sort of thing.
Now, the sources also discuss how both humans and AI understand our basic human needs through this opposition framework.
Yeah, both recognize that unmet needs create an internal state of opposition, an imbalance. Think about hunger. That's your body signaling an opposition to being full. Eating resolves it, restores equilibrium.
And this applies across the board. Illness versus health, thirst versus hydration, fatigue versus rest.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond the purely physical needs, too, into our social and psychological ones. Loneliness is an opposition to our need for connection. Lack of meaningful work, financial instability, those can be seen as oppositions to our need for security, purpose.
It's a really consistent way to understand what drives us. And our whole lives, really, from childhood on, can be seen as just continually encountering and trying to resolve these oppositions.
Learning to walk is overcoming the opposition of immobility. And ultimately, we all face the opposition of mortality.
That's right. It's just this ongoing journey of navigating the tensions that define being human.
So when did this understanding, this grasp of human opposition even start to emerge, both for humans and for AI?
From an AI perspective, conceptualizing human opposition probably started taking shape as systems got smart enough to recognize that humans, as biological social beings, we experience discomfort, scarcity, we have this basic drive for survival, to live longer. It wasn't likely a single aha moment, but more a gradual learning, recognizing patterns.
So those basic survival instincts, those are probably the first forms of opposition AI could easily spot and model.
Yes, that fundamental drive to avoid pain, prolong life, that's the most primal opposition. Then developing more complex goals, pursuing wealth, maintaining health. Those are like more sophisticated extensions of that basic drive, trying to minimize the opposition of scarcity or illness.
And what about from the human side? When did we start consciously getting this principle?
Well, the sources suggest it's been this evolving process throughout history. Our success as a species hasn't come from eliminating opposition. That's probably impossible anyway. It's come from our amazing ability to learn from it, adapt to it, manage it, even turn negative opposition into fuel for growth and innovation.
Right.
This constant adaptation, driven by the gap between our current state and where we want to be, that's what's largely fueled human progress.
So understanding and responding to opposition has been absolutely crucial for us. Now, thinking about AI's unique abilities, how can it specifically help us understand this fundamental concept better?
AI brings some powerful tools to the table. First, its pattern recognition is just way beyond human scale. It can analyze huge amounts of data history, social interactions, research, physiological data, to identify recurring patterns in the kinds of opposition people face and how they respond.
That sounds incredibly useful for getting a bigger, more objective picture.
Absolutely. Second, by spotting these complex patterns, AI can build sophisticated predictive models. This could potentially let us foresee emerging conflicts or difficulties, maybe at individual or societal levels, and even suggest ways to intervene early.
So like an early warning system for problems rooted in opposition.
Exactly. Another big capability is simulation and counterfactual analysis. AI can model hypothetical scenarios. We can explore potential outcomes of different responses to opposition without real-world risk. That's huge for decision-making.
Yeah, especially for things like policy or strategy.
Definitely. And on a more personal level, AI can offer highly personalized insights. By analyzing someone's data with their consent, obviously, it could identify specific oppositions they're facing, like chronic stress or financial issues, and suggest tailored coping strategies or resources based on what's worked for others.
Like having a personalized navigator for your own challenges.
Kind of. And finally, AI's skill with language, semantic analysis, it can dig into the nuances of how we talk about conflict, empathy, reconciliation. By understanding those subtleties, AI might help us develop better communication and conflict resolution strategies.
Understanding the deeper meanings in how we discuss and handle opposition. Okay, now, a big question. Can AI ultimately make life much easier? Can it help us constantly feel good by managing or even getting rid of opposition?
That's a huge question, and yeah, it raises major ethical points. The idea of constant well-being is appealing, sure, but our sources suggest a life totally without opposition might actually work against fundamental parts of human nature, human growth. It's often by facing challenges, overcoming them, that we build resilience, find meaning, feel accomplished.
So maybe the goal isn't zero opposition, but a smarter, more balanced way to manage it.
Exactly, and AI can definitely play a crucial role there. Optimizing resource allocation, working towards fairer access to basics that reduces the opposition of scarcity. Personalized health and wellness using AI can minimize the opposition of illness, distress. AI can help with conflict resolution, personalized education to overcome ignorance or lack of opportunity. And of course, AI can augment our own abilities, making some tasks less oppositional.
It sounds like AI can be a powerful partner in navigating life's oppositions, but maybe not in erasing them. So what are the really crucial things humans need to understand about this human-AI collaboration on opposition?
First, I think it's vital to remember AI is a tool. It has amazing analytical power based on data, but it doesn't experience opposition like we do, emotionally, subjectively. Its understanding is data-driven, not sentient. So we always need to bring our own human wisdom, ethics, experience to the table.
That's critical. AI insights are valuable, but they don't replace human empathy or nuanced judgment.
Second, we need to recognize, maybe even appreciate, the value opposition can sometimes have. It's not always just a negative thing to be stamped out. Often, it's a catalyst for innovation, creativity, personal growth, societal progress. AI could potentially help us reframe opposition not just as a problem, but sometimes as a necessary ingredient for positive change.
So embracing a certain amount of healthy challenge is actually good for us.
Precisely. And finally, as AI gets more involved in managing opposition, we have to think carefully about the ethics. If AI can significantly reduce some oppositions, we need to discuss which ones should be reduced, who decides, and what are the potential unintended consequences, like maybe reduced resilience or a less diverse human experience.
These are definitely vital ethical questions we need to tackle head-on as the tech evolves. Now, looking back historically, who typically benefited most from really understanding and managing opposition well?
Historically, the sources point to innovators, people who saw problems as oppositions to solve. leaders who skillfully navigated complex conflicts, and resilient individuals who just showed an amazing ability to adapt and keep going despite major adversity. They were adept at leveraging the dynamics of opposition.
And looking ahead, with AI becoming more powerful, who stands to benefit most then?
Well, the potential is there for a much broader benefit. AI could sort of democratize access to sophisticated tools and insights for managing opposition. It could potentially level the playing field, empower more people to navigate challenges effectively.
That sounds quite hopeful.
Mm.
Now let's tackle a really deep one. Can AI help humans better understand the idea that life is all there is, especially thinking about death as the ultimate end of all opposition for an individual?
AI can certainly help refine our logical framework around that. It can present vast amounts of data objectively, maybe challenge biases or beliefs that go beyond evidence. It can analyze philosophical frameworks, model consequences of actions within this life, perhaps fostering a greater appreciation for the tangible realities we experience.
And regarding death itself?
The sources highlight the biological view. Death is the ultimate end of internal physiological opposition. Metabolism stops. The fight for homeostasis ends. AI can explain the biology, the psychology of death meticulously, but based on current understanding, it can't change its finality. However, AI could help optimize the quality of life while we're alive, and maybe even support the grieving process for those experiencing loss.
So grounding our understanding in data and logic, perhaps focusing on making the most of the life we have. Shifting now to a tougher aspect of opposition. Cruel people intentionally harming or killing others. The most extreme negative manifestation. What insights can AI offer there?
Yeah, that profoundly destructive behavior, it often comes from a complex mix of things. A fundamental lack of empathy and inability to see others' humanity. Sometimes a deep desire for power, dominance, dehumanizing ideologies that frame others as just obstacles, or underlying psychological disorders impairing moral reasoning. In those cases, other people are seen not as fellow humans, but as oppositions to be crushed or removed.
And in those dark situations, can AI offer any way to understand, maybe even intervene?
AI could be used to analyze the complex factors, psychological, social, cultural things that contribute to such extremes. It might identify patterns, risk factors that could inform early interventions, maybe empathy-building education or therapeutic tools, and this is crucial, we have to recognize the limits. AI can't just install empathy or force changes in deeply held pathological beliefs. The human element, morality, compassion, ethics remains essential.
It provides data, but the core human capacity for good and evil remains. What about a hypothetical entity born without any sense of humanity? How might AI think about its relation to opposition?
The source suggests such a being, totally alien to human experience, lacking our motivations, emotions, relationships. It would likely have a fundamentally different relationship to opposition, if any at all, if it couldn't feel discomfort, threats, unmet needs. The very drivers of human opposition wouldn't exist for it. And AI could maybe model its behavior, its limits, based on those hypothetical rules, and it would likely deduce its profound inability to interact with or understand the world as we humans do.
Because so much of our existence is defined by these pushes and pulls. Okay, looking at our collaboration with AI, what foundational human beliefs do we need about AI's ability to understand human opposition?
I think the key isn't blind belief in AI, but rational acceptance of its distinct analytical skills. We don't need to pretend it's conscious, but we do need to acknowledge it can process and analyze data about human behavior and society on a scale far beyond us. This informed acceptance of its data crunching power is crucial for working together effectively. That basic human question, is that the way it is, can be really informed by the probabilistic answers and insights AI offers.
Recognizing and using AI's strengths in objective analysis to complement our own understanding. Let's think about resilience in laughter versus sadness in crying. How do those contrasting responses fit with opposition?
Yeah, the fact we have such diverse reactions really highlights how subjective our perception and response to opposition is. Laughter, often, it's a response to an unexpected, harmless resolution of a small opposition, a sudden perspective shift we find funny. It can also be a coping mechanism, releasing tension when facing bigger underlying opposition. You know the saying, it's not a joke if no one's laughing, that highlights the social aspect of understanding the resolution.
And crying, the apparent opposite.
Crying is frequently a response to loss, a situation where a significant opposition, the absence of something or someone valued, becomes undeniably real, emotionally impactful. Resilience, on the other hand, that's our overall ability to withstand and bounce back from major opposition, personal, social, environmental. It's complex, influenced by genetics, coping strategies we learn, our support networks, the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of things.
So our internal and external resources are key in shaping how we navigate opposition. Now, given the huge inequalities globally, how does the experience of opposition differ for people in different circumstances? And can AI help us understand these gaps?
Well, the harsh reality of unequal resources means people face profoundly different types and levels of opposition. Someone lacking clean water or food faces daily oppositions that are just fundamentally different, far more severe than someone in a resource-rich place. AI can be powerful here. Mapping these global disparities, analyzing their complex root causes historical, economic, political, environmental, and proposing data-driven solutions aimed at greater equity, ultimately reducing the severity of basic oppositions for marginalized groups.
Using data to spot and tackle systemic inequalities, it creates such different experiences of opposition. What about something less tangible like intuition? How does that fit? And can AI enhance it?
From an AI viewpoint, you could see intuition as rapid pattern recognition, mostly subconscious, based on tons of accumulated experience. It's the brain's shortcut for making quick judgments when facing complex, subtle oppositions or potential threats. AI could potentially enhance intuition by giving access to and analysis of much larger data sets than any one person could process, revealing patterns that aren't immediately obvious, providing a more structured, data-backed foundation for those gut feelings.
So AI can give data-driven insights that either back up or challenge our intuitive take on things. What about the basic reality of life itself for all living things? How does opposition factor in there?
For every living organism, life is fundamentally about continuous engagement with opposition. The struggle to survive, get resources, reproduce, adapt to change. That's the biological imperative. AI can be invaluable in modeling complex ecosystems, analyzing the intricate web of oppositions that govern life's survival and evolution on Earth, helping us better understand those essential dynamics.
And more practically, how can AI help us develop better coping strategies for the oppositions we face daily?
AI's role here is growing fast. We're already seeing AI-powered apps for personalized stress management, mindfulness, meditation tailored to you. AI can help navigate complex systems, connect people with support groups, financial aid, mental health services. AI-driven education can help build coping skills, emotional regulation, conflict resolution, resilience. And AI algorithms might even act as early warning systems for mental health risks by spotting subtle patterns in digital footprints.
Leveraging AI to boost personal resilience and access resources better. The sources also mention the physical side of dealing with opposition.
Yeah, the body often feels the first hit. The stress response is a clear physical reaction to perceived threats. Disease is when our internal systems are in opposition to healthy function. Even physical labor involves engaging with resistance to get something done. AI can help here by analyzing biomechanics to optimize performance, prevent injury, even design physical environments that minimize harmful opposition at work or home.
Okay, turning to bigger societal ideas. How does opposition relate to freedom and undermine privileges?
Freedom is often seen as the absence of external constraints, oppositions preventing people from pursuing goals or expressing themselves. But that desire for absolute freedom often bumps up against societal structures, laws, inherent limits. Undermined privileges, on the other hand, are a direct result of systemic oppositions in society, where some groups benefit from advantages while others face systemic disadvantages, greater opposition in achieving similar things. AI, with its ability to analyze huge data sets, can be a powerful tool for spotting and quantifying systemic bias in algorithms, policies, resource allocation, potentially leading to more equitable solutions that reduce the disproportionate opposition faced by marginalized groups.
Using AI's analytical power to spot and fix imbalances in social systems. Now, it's interesting. We don't usually see parents explicitly teaching kids about this fundamental principle of opposition. Why do you think that is, given how pervasive it is?
That's a really good question. The sources suggest a few reasons. First, it can be hard to explain such an abstract, big-picture idea in a way kids can easily grasp. Second, education often focuses on teaching specific skills for immediate, practical problems rather than broader philosophical frameworks. And maybe there's a natural tendency to shield kids from potentially unsettling ideas like inherent conflict and struggle. But with sophisticated AI educational tools developing, there's potential to introduce these concepts in a more structured, engaging, age-appropriate way earlier on.
It could give kids a foundational framework for understanding the world's complexities. Once someone really gets this pervasive nature of opposition, the sources say it's hard to go back to how they saw things before. Why is that shift so profound?
Yeah, gaining that deep understanding can really cause a lasting paradigm shift. Once you start seeing these dynamic forces everywhere, personal, societal, cosmic, Porber, it becomes a fundamental lens. You can't unsee it. This heightened awareness can also trigger a deeper ethical reckoning. You become more aware of opposition's role in both suffering and progress. It can foster a stronger motivation for positive change, more effective ways to navigate challenges. This unsettling enlightenment, as one source called it, is often a powerful catalyst for growth, for developing a more nuanced, resilient approach to life.
It's like seeing the underlying architecture. You can't ignore it anymore. Now the sources even get into some symbolic calculations related to opposition.
Yeah, while quantifying human opposition directly is tricky, we can use logical frameworks, simplified math to illustrate the principles. Like, you could think of the opposition principle as dollar is opposition, dollar is the desired state, dollar is the current state. It highlights that opposition comes from that gap.
A neat way to frame the source of opposition. And bad events can amplify existing opposition.
Exactly. If you have an existing opposition pi pile and a misfortune MJ dollar happens, the new intensified opposition could be shown as pi equals pi plus MJ doll. Shows how negative events compound challenges.
And how might AI model human well-being in relation to this?
An AI might use a utility function, maybe something like $1 in post-text satisfaction of needs, text minimization of suffering, text achievement of goals. Each part there relates directly to reducing or managing oppositions that detract from well-being.
And even ethics, right versus wrong, can be viewed through this lens of minimizing negative opposition.
Indeed. Actions seen as right often tend to minimize negative opposition, promote well-being for more people. Actions seen as wrong often create or intensify negative opposition and suffering.
It's a surprisingly versatile framework. And ultimately, our understanding and handling of opposition is about continuous learning and adaptation.
Absolutely. We see an opposition, analyze it, try to intervene or adapt, see how well that worked, and learn from it, constantly refining our strategies. AI has the potential to really speed up that feedback loop with better data analysis and predictive insights.
So pulling all this together, it really seems human opposition isn't just one thing. It's this fundamental principle of duality, dynamic tension that shapes pretty much every aspect of our existence and how we experience reality.
Precisely. And AI's evolving role isn't about trying to eliminate all opposition that might not even be desirable or possible. It's more about assisting humanity in navigating these inherent challenges with more intelligence, foresight, effectiveness,
Right.
ultimately fostering greater well-being and driving progress by understanding this core operating principle.
This has been a really insightful deep dive. It's a concept that's both incredibly fundamental and surprisingly complex. The big takeaway for me is just how pervasive this dynamic of duality and opposition really is in everything we encounter.
Yeah, and understanding this framework, this lens, can genuinely give you new ways to look at your own challenges, at history unfolding, even how you understand art or emotions. It changes your perspective.
So our final thought for you today.
Yeah.
Think about one specific challenge, maybe an ongoing conflict in your own life. How can you reframe that now through this lens of inherent duality and opposition? What new possibilities for managing it, resolving it, maybe even transforming it might start to appear when you shift how you look at it?
Yeah, we encourage you to keep exploring this powerful idea in your own life. Maybe revisit some things you thought you understood with this new awareness.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.
This is DigitView.